There is a moment when you realize something is deeply wrong, not because they left, not because they hurt you, but because a part of you is still trying to earn love from someone who never truly showed up. Let me ask you something, and don't answer it out loud yet. Just sit with it. Why does it feel so familiar to love someone who can't fully love you back? This question is uncomfortable for a reason. Because emotionally unavailable people don't just appear randomly in our lives. They activate something old, something unresolved, something that learned long ago that love must be chased, proven, deserved, or tolerated in fragments. From a psychological perspective, emotional unavailability is rarely about the other person alone. It is about the silent contract we make with ourselves. A contract that says, if I try harder, they will change. If I'm patient enough, they will open up. If I love them correctly, I will finally be chosen. But here is the dark truth most people don't want to face. Emotionally unavailable people don't make you feel unloved by accident. They recreate a familiar emotional environment. And familiarity is not the same as safety. Think about how this kind of love feels. It is intense but inconsistent, hopeful but unstable, deep but never secure. One day they are close, warm, present. The next day they pull away, shut down, disappear emotionally. And instead of leaving, you wait. You analyze. You blame yourself. You ask what you did wrong. This is where the psychological trap begins. Your nervous system starts associating love with uncertainty, connection with anxiety, affection with fear of loss. And slowly, without realizing it, your sense of self starts shrinking to fit the emotional limitations of the other person. Emotionally unavailable people rarely say, I cannot love you fully. They show it through absence, through silence, through emotional walls disguised as independence, trauma, or complexity. And the most dangerous part is not their distance. It is your hope. Hope keeps you emotionally invested in potential instead of reality. Hope keeps you negotiating your needs. Hope convinces you that emotional deprivation is temporary. But let me ask you another question. And this one matters. What if the version of them you are in love with doesn't actually exist? Psychologically, we don't fall in love only with people. We fall in love with projections, with imagined futures, with who they could become if they finally healed, opened up, or chose us. And emotionally unavailable people become perfect screens for projection, because they give you just enough to keep you attached, but never enough to feel secure. This creates a powerful psychological loop, intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. You don't know when the reward will come, so you keep playing. Every moment of closeness feels euphoric, every withdrawal feels devastating, and your brain becomes obsessed with the next emotional win. This is not romance, this is conditioning. Now ask yourself this, gently. Why does consistency feel boring, but inconsistency feels intoxicating? For many people, emotional availability feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel unsafe. If you grew up feeling unseen, unheard, or emotionally neglected, your system learned to survive without full connection. So when someone offers half love, it feels normal. When someone offers full presence, it feels suspicious. Emotionally unavailable partners often trigger an unconscious childhood wound. The wound of trying to be enough for someone who was emotionally absent, and without realizing it, you replay the same story, hoping this time it ends differently. But here is the uncomfortable psychological reality. You cannot heal a wound by reopening it with the same type of person. Loving emotionally unavailable people keeps you stuck in emotional limbo. You are not fully alone but never truly together. You are attached but not secure, invested but not nourished. And over time, this erodes your self-worth. You start asking questions that damage your identity. Why am I too much? Why do I care more? Why am I not enough to make them stay? These questions slowly shift the focus away from the real issue, their inability to connect. Emotionally unavailable people are not evil. They are often deeply wounded. But understanding their pain does not require sacrificing your own emotional health. And this is where many people get stuck. They confuse empathy with self-abandonment. They stay because they understand. They stay because they see the trauma. They stay because they believe love means endurance. But love is not measured by how much pain you can tolerate. Let me leave you with one final question for this part. If love didn't require suffering, would you still choose this person? Sit with that question. Don't rush the answer, because in the next part, we are going to explore why letting go feels harder than staying, and what your attachment style has to do with all of this. There is a reason why letting go of emotionally unavailable people feels almost impossible. And no, it's not because you love too much. It's because your attachment system is activated. From a psychological point of view, attachment is not logical. It is emotional memory. Your brain is not asking, is this healthy? Your brain is asking, is this familiar? And emotionally unavailable relationships often feel familiar to people who learned early in life that love is inconsistent. When someone is distant, avoidant, emotionally closed, your nervous system doesn't calm down. It wakes up. You become hyper-aware. You overthink messages. You replay conversations. You scan for signs of closeness or rejection. This is not weakness. This is survival behavior. Anxious attachment develops when love was unpredictable, when affection came and went, when connection had to be earned. So when you meet someone emotionally unavailable, your system says this feels like home, even if that home was painful. Here's the paradox. The very thing that hurts you is what keeps you attached. Distance creates desire. Silence creates obsession. Uncertainty creates emotional dependency. And slowly you start confusing anxiety with passion. Ask yourself this honestly. Do you miss them? Or do you miss the emotional tension they created inside you? Because calm love feels quiet. It doesn't trigger adrenaline. It doesn't keep you guessing. And for someone used to emotional chaos, calm can feel empty. This is why emotionally unavailable people often say, I don't feel the spark anymore, when faced with real intimacy. And this is why emotionally available partners may feel boring to someone still attached to emotional struggle. Your body learned that love equals effort, so when effort is no longer required, something feels wrong. Another painful truth, emotionally unavailable people rarely chase. They are chased. And when you chase someone emotionally unavailable, you slowly give away your power. You stop asking for what you need. You lower expectations. You silence discomfort. You become emotionally flexible to accommodate their rigidity, and without noticing, your identity begins to revolve around their mood, their availability, their attention. This is emotional self-erasure. Let me ask you something important. When was the last time you felt emotionally safe with them? Not excited, not hopeful, not temporarily reassured. Safe. If you struggle to answer, that's not a coincidence. Safety is not intensity. Safety is consistency. Emotionally unavailable people can feel deep emotions, but they struggle to sustain connection. So the relationship becomes a cycle of closeness and withdrawal, and each withdrawal reopens the original wound. This is why leaving feels like losing something vital, not because they were perfect, but because they activated something unresolved inside you. Your pain is not about them. It is about what they represent. Unmet needs, unreceived love, unfinished emotional business. And here's where many people get stuck. They believe healing means understanding the other person better. But healing actually begins when you understand yourself. When you ask, why do I stay where I am not fully met? Why do I romanticize emotional distance? Why do I ignore my own needs to preserve connection? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are freeing. Because once you see the pattern, you stop personalizing the rejection. You realize something crucial. Their emotional unavailability is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their capacity, and capacity cannot be forced. No amount of love can make someone emotionally available if they are not willing to face themselves. And now, I want to pause here for a moment. If any of this feels familiar, I want you to do something simple. In the comments, write one word that describes how loving emotionally unavailable people makes you feel. Just one word, not for me, for you. Because naming the feeling is the first step to breaking the pattern. In the next part, we are going to talk about the hidden cost of staying, what it slowly does to your self-esteem, and why choosing yourself feels terrifying but necessary. There is a cost to loving emotionally unavailable people that is rarely talked about, because it doesn't show up all at once. It shows up quietly. At first, you tell yourself you're just being patient, understanding, supportive. But over time, patience turns into self-neglect. You start adjusting who you are to avoid triggering their distance. You soften your needs. You minimize your emotions. You tell yourself, it's not that important. And slowly, something inside you goes silent. This is how self-esteem erodes, not through dramatic rejection, but through subtle emotional absence. When your feelings are consistently unmet, your mind begins to adapt. You stop expecting care. You stop expressing disappointment. You stop believing your needs deserve space. This creates an internal narrative that sounds like this: I'm asking for too much. I should be grateful for what I get. This is just how love is. But love was never meant to feel like emotional rationing. Let me ask you something difficult. How often do you feel lonely while being with them? Loneliness inside a relationship is one of the deepest forms of emotional pain, because you are not alone, but you feel unseen. Emotionally unavailable people can be physically present and emotionally absent at the same time, and your system feels the contradiction. You sense the lack of emotional attunement, the missing curiosity, the absence of emotional repair, and yet you stay. Why? Because leaving feels like failure, like giving up, like confirming the fear that you are not lovable enough to be chosen fully. But here is the psychological truth. Staying in emotionally unavailable relationships reinforces the belief that love must be earned, and this belief follows you. It affects how you show up, how you set boundaries, how you tolerate neglect. Over time, you stop trusting your instincts, because every time your body signals discomfort, you override it. This creates emotional disconnection from yourself. You become skilled at understanding others, but disconnected from your own inner world. And this is where exhaustion comes in. Not physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, the kind that makes you feel numb, detached, drained, because chasing emotional availability is labor, invisible labor. You are always working, always waiting, always hoping, and hope, when unreciprocated, becomes heavy. Another question to sit with: if someone treated a person you love the way you are being treated, what would you tell them? Often we offer others the clarity we deny ourselves, because choosing yourself feels like loss. Even when staying costs you your peace, emotionally unavailable people often benefit from your emotional flexibility. They get companionship without vulnerability, connection without responsibility, and you get uncertainty, doubt, emotional hunger. This imbalance slowly shifts how you see yourself. You start measuring your worth by their attention, your value by their availability, your importance by how much they let you in. And that is not love, that is emotional dependence. Here's something important. Healing does not mean blaming them. It means reclaiming yourself. It means recognizing that your capacity to love deeply is not the problem. Your willingness to stay where you are not met is. And this is where fear appears. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear that this is the best you can get. But ask yourself this honestly: is being emotionally alone with someone really better than being alone without them? This is the moment where patterns break. Not when you feel strong, but when you feel tired of abandoning yourself. In the final part, we are going to talk about what it actually looks like to choose differently, how to retrain your attachment system, and how to stop mistaking emotional distance for love. Choosing differently does not start with confidence. It starts with awareness. Most people wait to feel ready before leaving emotionally unavailable relationships, but readiness rarely comes first. Clarity does. Clarity is the moment you stop asking, "How can I make them love me?" and start asking, "Why am I accepting less than I need?" This is where real healing begins. Retraining your attachment system does not mean shutting down your emotions. It means learning to associate love with safety instead of anxiety. At first, this feels unnatural. Your body may crave the emotional highs and lows, the tension, the unpredictability, because your nervous system learned to confuse intensity with connection. So when you step away from emotionally unavailable people, you may feel withdrawal, not because they were right for you, but because your system is detoxing from emotional inconsistency. This is important to understand. Missing someone does not mean they were good for you. It means a bond existed, and bonds can exist even in unhealthy dynamics. Healing requires grieving not just the person, but the fantasy that one day they would choose you fully, that one day they would open up, that one day your love would finally be enough. Letting go of that fantasy is painful, but it is also freeing. Because when you stop chasing emotional availability, you create space for it. Emotionally available love feels different. It feels calm, predictable, secure. There is no guessing, no constant analysis, no emotional starvation. And at first, this kind of love might feel unfamiliar, even boring. But boredom is not the absence of love. It is the absence of anxiety. You do not need to prove your worth to someone who is capable of seeing it. So ask yourself this final question: what would my life feel like if love didn't require me to shrink? This question changes everything, because the goal is not to become less emotional. The goal is to choose people who can meet you emotionally. You are not too much. You are asking the wrong person. You are not needy. You are emotionally deprived. And you are not broken. You learn to survive in environments where love was inconsistent. Choosing differently means choosing yourself even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels lonely, even when it goes against old patterns. And if you stayed until this moment, I want you to do something. In the comments, write the city you are watching this from. And if you watch this entire video, type the word clarity. If this video resonated with you, consider subscribing. This channel is for those who think deeply, feel deeply, and are learning to choose themselves. And before you go, watch one of the videos on the end screen. They continue this conversation and may help you understand yourself even more.